On October 5, 2025, a weapon fired from the deck of an American aircraft carrier, and the Pentagon said nothing about it for 6 months. It carried no explosive. It cost almost nothing per shot. The drone it hit didn't explode. It stopped working in midair and fell into the ocean. That weapon was built to solve a crisis that has already cost the U.S. Navy more than $1 billion, depleted entire missile stockpiles, and sent one $67 million fighter jet to the bottom of the sea. The solution is not what anyone expected. Between October 2023 and January 2025, U.S. Navy warships stationed in the Red Sea fought off more than 300 attacks launched by Houthi forces operating out of Yemen. Those attacks came in relentless waves: drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, launched from the coastline of one of the poorest countries on Earth. The Navy stopped almost all of them. Ship after ship, attack after attack, the defense held. By any conventional military measure, it was a remarkable performance. But the financial cost told a completely different story. To shoot down those drones and missiles, American destroyers fired 220 surface-to-air interceptors between October 2023 and January 2025 alone. The standard SM-2 missile used for those intercepts costs $2.1 million per round. The SM-6, used for more complex threats, costs $3.9 million. Certain specialized interceptors expended during the campaign cost as much as $27.9 million per shot. When the full accounting was done, the Navy had spent more than $1 billion in under 18 months, shooting down drones that cost somewhere between $1,000 and $20,000 each. Senior admirals publicly acknowledged the situation. Missile stockpiles had run dangerously low. The Houthis kept launching. And in Washington, the Navy's top officer was already looking for something fundamentally different. What he found, and what is being quietly deployed right now across the carrier fleet, is the subject of almost no public coverage, and it changes what an American carrier can actually survive. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what a carrier strike group is actually built to do, and where it breaks down. A modern American carrier does not sail alone. It moves inside a layered defensive shell made up of guided missile destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and patrol aircraft, all networked through a system called Aegis. The Aegis combat system uses advanced radar to track more than 100 targets simultaneously and can launch interceptors within seconds of acquiring a threat. Against ballistic missiles incoming at hypersonic speed, against cruise missiles skimming the ocean surface at low altitude, against enemy fighters hundreds of miles out, Aegis is among the most capable air defense networks ever built. Drone swarms attack on a completely different axis. They do not need to outmaneuver a defense system. They do not need to be fast. They do not even need to be sophisticated. They need to be numerous, and they need to cost almost nothing. Work the math. If an adversary launches 100 drones simultaneously, each costing $1,000, the total cost of that attack is $100,000. Shooting down every one of those drones with SM-2 missiles costs $210 million. That is a 2,000 to 1 cost imbalance, entirely in the attacker's favor. Run 3 of those swarms in a single week and the defender has spent more than the annual military budgets of most countries, just on air defense. The ship is still floating. The magazine is empty. In the Red Sea, that math stopped being theoretical. By January 2025, the missile stockpiles of the USS Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group were described by senior officers as dangerously depleted. One $67 million Super Hornet fighter jet went over the side of a carrier into the ocean during evasive maneuvers to avoid a single Houthi drone. That drone cost roughly $20,000. A massive U.S. bombing campaign targeting Houthi drone production and launch infrastructure, costing hundreds of millions of dollars on its own, reduced drone launches by 55%. The remaining 45% kept coming. If this kind of operational reality, the one buried in budget documents and admiral briefings, is the reason you come here, hitting like takes 2 seconds and helps more people find it. Because what the Navy deployed next had never been used at sea before. The first answer was not a laser, not a microwave cannon. It was a drone built to kill other drones. In March 2025, Admiral Daryl Caudill, head of U.S. Fleet Forces Command, announced that destroyers assigned to the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group would deploy with 2 new counter-drone interceptor systems. The first was Raytheon's Coyote Block 2. The second was Anduril's Roadrunner M. Both are jet-powered loitering interceptors, weapons that launch from the ship, fly out to meet incoming threats, destroy them in the air, and in some cases return to do it again. Neither one works like a conventional missile. That distinction is exactly what makes them significant. The Coyote Block 2 is roughly the size of a large model airplane. It fires from a sealed canister via a small rocket booster, then a turbojet engine takes over, giving it what Raytheon officially calls dogfight-type maneuverability. It carries a roughly 4-pound blast fragmentation warhead fitted with a proximity fuse. The fuse detonates the warhead close to the target, tearing through it with high-speed metal fragments. No direct hit required. At approximately $125,000 per unit, the Coyote Block 2 costs 1/17 of the SM-2 it replaces in the counter-drone role. The Navy can carry large numbers of them without consuming the standard vertical launch cells reserved for the main missile battery. It is using the attacker's own cost logic against them. The Roadrunner M operates on a logic that sounds more like commercial spaceflight than military hardware. It was built by Anduril Industries, the defense technology company founded by Palmer Luckey, the same engineer behind the original Oculus virtual reality headset. Roadrunner M is powered by a pair of small turbojets that Anduril developed entirely in-house. It launches vertically from an autonomous mini hangar called the Nest, which manages the vehicle independently. According to Anduril's own published specifications, it carries 3 times the warhead payload and has 10 times the one-way effective range of comparable systems on the market, and it is 3 times more maneuverable in G-force tolerance. If a mission is recalled or the target is missed, Roadrunner M descends vertically on 4 folding outrigger legs, not unlike the way a SpaceX Falcon 9 booster touches down after a launch, refuels, and goes back out. A reusable counter-drone aircraft operating from the deck of a warship. Estimated cost per unit sits at around $500,000 based on the $250 million contract the Pentagon awarded Anduril in late 2024. Still a fraction of what it replaces in the defensive chain. On the morning of October 5, 2025, a joint team from the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army, and a defense contractor called AeroVironment set up a system on the flight deck of the USS George H.W. Bush, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier operating in the Atlantic Ocean. What they brought on board looked nothing like a weapons battery. It was a containerized unit, roughly the footprint of a large shipping crate rolled onto the deck without any modification to the ship itself. No drilling, no permanent installation, no structural changes. They plugged it into the carrier's existing power supply, and within hours, it was operational. That roll-on, roll-off capability, The ability to install a weapon system on any ship without costly or time-consuming modifications is one of the key engineering breakthroughs the system represents. The weapon was Locust, AeroVironment's laser weapon system. In the live fire test conducted that morning, it used multi-band radio frequency sensors to detect multiple drone targets flying above the ship. It acquired, tracked, and engaged them. Every drone was neutralized. It was the first time in history that a laser weapon had ever operated from the flight deck of an American aircraft carrier. The U.S. Navy photographed it, then waited 6 months to release those photographs. And the detail that changes everything, Locust has no ammunition. It runs entirely off the ship's own electrical power. On a nuclear-powered carrier, that power supply is effectively unlimited for the duration of any deployment. As long as the reactor generates electricity, which it does continuously, the laser fires. Against a swarm of 100 drones, a commander with a laser-equipped ship does not count rounds remaining. He counts seconds per target. John Garrity, Vice President of Directed Energy Systems at AeroVironment, described rolling Locust onto a carrier and commencing operations as a game-changer for the Navy. The numbers back him up. Every shot from a laser costs the Navy a fraction of a cent in electricity. Every shot from an SM-2 costs $2.1 million. That is not a marginal improvement. It is a different category of warfare. Locust handles drones one at a time, rapidly, cheaply, with no ammunition limit. Behind it stands a weapon being prepared for shipboard deployment right now that handles them differently, all of them, simultaneously across a wide zone of airspace. The program is called Project Meteor. It is the U.S. Navy's first shipboard high-powered microwave weapon. Unlike a laser, which focuses a narrow beam on a single target, a high-powered microwave system radiates a broad electromagnetic pulse across an entire sector of sky. Every drone flying inside that zone at that moment has its electronics disrupted or destroyed at the same time. No individual targeting. No per-drone engagement, no tracking solution required. The system sweeps a zone, and the swarm's electronics collapse across the board. Project Meteor is managed by the Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren Division. Raytheon began designing and testing the antenna systems in December 2023. The Navy's fiscal year 2025 budget documents describe the program's goals in plain language: low cost per shot, deep magazine, tactically significant range, short time engagement for a multi-target approach. The Navy requested over $9 million for Meteor development in fiscal year 2025 and planned a first shipboard test at sea in 2026, this year. The threat driving that urgency goes beyond the Houthis. China's People's Liberation Army has been developing drone swarm capabilities at significant scale. Pairing mass-produced aerial systems with AI-enabled coordination designed specifically to overwhelm American carrier defenses through volume and saturation. Analysts at the Center for Naval Analyses and CNAS have warned that in a conflict in the Pacific, carrier strike groups could face swarms numbering in the hundreds or beyond. Against that kind of attack, intercepting drones one at a time, even with a laser, may not be fast enough. A microwave weapon that defeats the entire swarm simultaneously is a different category of answer. Coyote brings down the cost. Roadrunner M brings back the interceptor. Locust eliminates the ammunition problem. And Meteor, if it works as designed, makes the swarm itself a failed tactic. None of these systems existed on a U.S. carrier flight deck 3 years ago. The United States built the most powerful carrier fleet in human history, a $15 billion ship. Billions more in destroyers, radar networks, missile batteries, and strike aircraft. And the thing forcing a complete rethink of how that fleet defends itself costs $20,000, fits in a pickup truck bed and flies itself into a target. What does it say about the nature of modern warfare when the most dangerous weapon a superpower faces can be mass-produced in a warehouse? If this kind of story, buried in budget documents, press releases, and 6-month-old photographs from a carrier flight deck is why you're here, hitting like takes 2 seconds and tells us to keep going deeper into these programs. And leave your answer below. Can the US actually win this technology race? Or is the math of the drone swarm always going to stay one step ahead of the defense?